so much of our strategy today as a business, as a real estate strategy, all stems from what works during a downturn. Walmart did the homework for us in the beginning, right? Of why they're in that town, why the other tenants surrounding it are in that town. Any property we buy on day one, unless something catastrophic happens, like, we're going to be okay.
So just going back to, your first experiences in real estate or when you were exposed to it, I feel like it's a very common thread for folks who didn't grow up around, let's say, family members that were heavily involved in real estate. You kind of had a vision of where you wanted to be one day, just didn't know how to get there, and it happened step by step. So my understanding is before you started to look at or got into the shadow-anchored retail centers, the Walmart shadow-anchored retail centers, you started with triple net properties. Before the triple nets, though, did you have any experience in real estate, or were you doing any deals on your own with partners, or maybe working for a large company?
Yeah, so no, it's a great story, honestly. So I went to school at Loyola Chicago, and one, that was a great experience for me just because I am not a student, and Chicago was amazing for me because I was able to get internships and jobs, and it felt like I went to school on the side. So I worked at a lot of startups and a couple of real estate companies. But my first internship between my freshman and sophomore year of college, I actually came back to St. Louis that summer, and I interned for Marcus & Millichap. For those who don't know, it's a large investment sales company. So brokering the sales of commercial real estate. And that was in 2010. And so that summer is where I met my now partner, who had only been there a couple of years, but he found this niche in selling Dollar Generals during the Great Recession and doing it nationally. And so that summer, he was the only person that gave me work to do. The office was like 10% filled. So that really was my first hands-on experience in just what commercial real estate is. And then in college, I spent 6 months or so working as a commercial appraisal assistant. And I would spend all day basically working on, like, here's what this guy bought it for. Here's what this person's buying it for, and how much money did the buyer make? And so I very quickly was like, well, I want to work somewhere that buys real estate. And, and in college and kind of figuring out what do I actually want to do and talking to all these different types of people, every broker kind of mentioned, the end goal is to be able to start buying my own real estate. And whether that's 15, 20, 25 years from now. And, and I explored a lot of those opportunities, but basically always came back to, well, if I want to buy real estate, I want to go work somewhere that buys real estate. And just the kind of the way my brain works is just it's a born entrepreneurial brain, whether I knew it at the time or not. But any corporation I actually interviewed for, I just did not have the feeling of like, this sounds like fun. And I kept in touch with Joe throughout college. Like, so when I was doing appraisals, I had access to CoStar, it's a big database, and he was then already starting to buy single-tenant Dollar Generals, not in brokerage anymore. And so I would export every single Dollar General owner and their contact information and comp from CoStar when I was doing appraisals and sent it to him. And anyways, so we kept that communication and relationship. So anyways, towards the end of my college career, I knew pretty certain that I wanted to work somewhere that bought real estate. And at the end of the day, the more corporate positions and companies that I had talked to or were interviewing with, I just kind of knew in my gut that it was a better opportunity for me to go somewhere where there was only 2 other people. It was 2 partners and me. And I already understood kind of the asset class, and it was just kind of like, this is what makes the most sense to me. I know that I'll be able to succeed. That was blind ignorance at the time, but anyways, jumped in head first, graduated on Saturday, and started on Monday.
Wow. That's awesome. So were you a partner day one, or did you start off working for Joe?
No, yeah, I was not a partner in the beginning. No, I
Okay.
worked for Joe. And I think the only disagreement, like, shouldn't say disagreement, the only like real confrontation between he and I in our now very long relationship was originally when I started, the understanding was any Dollar General that I found that we ended up buying, I would get $1,000. And we did the first one and he gave me $500. And I said, no, it's 1,000. And he's like, I don't think I would have given you $1,000. And I said, well, if it wasn't 1,000, I would have taken the job. Anyways, so he gave me 1,000, and we've had a great relationship ever since.
That I'm sure in hindsight it seems like a silly argument, but at the time I bet that extra $500 meant the world to you.
Yeah, he forgot about it in 10 minutes.
So when you guys were buying the Dollar Generals, can you kind of speak on what the strategy was at the time, and also the investment minimum, I believe, was 10 grand.
Yeah.
Correct. And what kind of total investment do you think you guys raised from LPs throughout your Dollar General run?
Throughout the Dollar General run, I mean, that's a good question, but it was probably, over a 4 or 5 year span, $20 million.
And today, do you know what the approximate LP investment is that you've raised, like through MRP?
Yeah, I mean, in total, it's about $200 million. We have about 125 at work right now.
Wow. And that's 10 times over 6, 7, 8 years, somewhere around there.
Yeah. And even when we started after Dollar Generals and doing the Walmart Shadows, where we still had $10,000 minimums, I mean, there's a certain inflection points throughout that time. And even today, we're still like, how do we even do that? And as we approach the future, it's kind of like, when you approach the future, it's of course we can go get that done. And then afterward, you're like, how in God's name did we do that?
Can you speak to the strategy with the Dollar General? So it was buy, extend leases perhaps, or
I mean, that's as simple as it was. So without getting into too many of the nuances of the Dollar General kind of real estate history, but we were buying kind of their prototype before they had a new prototype, which kind of was in the early 2010s when they kind of really went full steam ahead with that. And so we were buying, these properties were anywhere from $500,000 to 1.2 maybe. And, Joe had really developed a relationship with Dollar General as well over those years. And so, but we were buying them one at a time, syndications, and we do the real thorough due diligence of talking to the guy that's delivering the milk or the chips or whatever. And, how do deliveries at this store do compared to the other 10 that you do? And talking to the managers of the stores who are always so proud of, where we've been the number one store in the region for X amount of years, and they show you their sales plaque in the back of the wall. But like that was truly our due diligence, which, is a part of how we do due diligence today is a big thing, is just how can you truly do the market research in the small towns, and specifically those really, really small towns. But at the end of the day, it was Dollar General was the kind of grocery store for the most part in the towns that we were investing in. And as long as we could get as much information as we could about how well that store did comparatively, we knew it was a good store. And then again, as our relationship grew with Dollar General, it was a lot faster to also kind of gauge what their plans were there and if we could get an extension. So we were typically buying things with 2, 3, 4 years left on the leases, and we would extend the leases for 10-year leases, and then we would sell them. And, simultaneously cap rates were compressing on Dollar General in general, no pun intended. But their credit was growing. They were growing 1,200 plus new stores a year. And obviously, like during that kind of financial crisis time, there were a lot of eyes on how well Dollar General was doing. And so the benefit was we were getting great prices on the exit. The alternative was it was getting a lot harder to buy deals, especially with the model that we had and the returns that we modeled out. And so that kind of process somewhat forced us to kind of start looking at different ways of growing the company and what we wanted to do next. But no, yeah, by about 2014, we had sold the bulk of that entire strategy, both through individual sales and then some portfolio sales at the end.
I love the in the weeds DD that you mentioned. I feel like when you're looking at small towns the way you guys do, you can't rely solely on the numbers the way you may in a larger market, because a lot of the numbers don't exist or they're misleading. We operate in some small towns as well, and I truly believe to really understand the market, you need to be in the weeds and understanding it the way that you guys understood each Dollar General you were buying. So visiting those towns to look at buy Dollar Generals, is that how you started to look at the strip centers or the shopping centers that you focus on today? Because it was around that 14, 15 time period that you guys made the switch and became MRP, correct?
Yeah, 2015 was both when we made the switch as a company and also bought our first Walmart Shadow Center. So, I mean, the true story is just we observed kind of not necessarily looking out for it, but as we would go to the really rural towns where Dollar General was, we would always pass through the larger small town, which was county seat, university town, regional hub for whatever reason. And there was always a Walmart, and there was always 1, 2, 3 shopping centers adjacent in front of it that had basically, primarily national credit tenants, discount retailers, services, and it was the same exact thing in every single one of those towns. So when we kind of knew that we were done with Dollar Generals, there's a couple things in consideration in the sense of we wanted to build a company that was scalable, that ended up being able to pay us residually versus being transactional fee-based. We wanted to buy real estate, not leases. And we also wanted to invest in an asset class that was, one, scalable, but two, most importantly, going to be resilient in a downturn. Especially early in our careers, we got a lot of feedback about, you haven't lived through a recession as a real estate operator. And valid points. At the same time, Joe and I both started our careers in the downturn, that Great Recession, and so much of our strategy today as a business, as a real estate strategy, all stems from what works during a downturn. We had the unique advantage of really learning small towns during that kind of crisis and that cycle. And, secondly, trying to reduce risk as much as possible up front, right? And we didn't want to get stuck in a situation where you're in a recession and you're solely reliant on, transactions to make money. And that was kind of the thought in the beginning. And then we kind of just somehow at the same time started talking about Walmart Shadows. We'd see some on the market sometimes. So it all kind of just clicked at the same time as we kind of launched the company with this business strategy of building a foundation of assets that, again, will at scale pay us residually and do well in a downturn, have less volatility. And, at the same time, we were so familiar with small towns and had that belief in that they are they provide that level of consistency. And putting it all together, also, there's just this super simple concept of Walmart's the center of these communities. These shopping centers already exist. Walmart did the homework for us in the beginning, right? Of why they're in that town, why the other tenants surrounding it are in that town. And basically, any property we buy on day one, unless something catastrophic happens, we're going to be okay. And then the whole kind of scale and strategy beyond that kind of evolved. But that was the impetus of it all.